I get it when you've been scrolling through a dozen gaming laptops and the price tags start looking like a down payment on a house. You pause and wonder if any of them actually deliver on the hype. You're probably thinking, will this thing actually run my favorite titles at smooth frame rates? Or am I just buying a glorified office notebook? That hesitation is real, especially when you're juggling a budget, a need for a decent screen for school or work, and the desire to jump into the latest releases without lag. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The HP Victus 15.6-inch tries to sit at that sweet spot where a 15-inch notebook feels portable enough for a coffee shop but still packs enough power to handle modern games at 1080p. At first glance, the headline specs 12th Gen Intel Core i5-12500H, 16GB of RAM, a 512GB SSD, and an RTX 4050 sound like a recipe for a solid mid-range gaming experience. But the real question is how those pieces work together in everyday use, and whether any hidden trade-offs make you regret the purchase later. Let's start with the display, because that's the first thing you'll notice when you open the lid. The 15.6-inch panel is a Full HD IPS screen with a 144Hz refresh rate and an anti-glare coating. In practice, that means fast-paced shooters feel noticeably smoother compared to the typical 60Hz laptops you see on sale. I tested a few recent titles Valorant Elden Ring, and Fortnite, and the higher refresh rate cut down motion blur enough that tracking enemies felt more natural, especially when paired with the RTX 4050's ability to push 1080p at medium-high settings. The anti-glare layer is a blessing if you game in a bright room or near a window. You won't be squinting at washed-out colors the way you might with a glossy panel. Now, performance. The Core i5-12500H is a 6-core, 12-thread chip that sits in the middle of Intel's 12th Gen lineup. It's not the top-tier i7, but for most current games it's more than capable when you pair it with the RTX 4050's 6GB of GDDR6 memory. In my real-world tests, Shadow of the Tomb Raider ran at about 70 frames per second on average at 1080p with high settings, while Cyberpunk 2077, a notoriously demanding game, settled around 45 frames per second on medium. Those numbers aren't ultra-smooth by the standards of a dedicated desktop GPU, but they're respectable for a laptop in this price bracket and certainly better than the integrated graphics you'd find in a cheaper alternative. One of the often overlooked parts of a gaming laptop is storage speed, and here the Victus uses an NVMe SSD that claims up to 12.8 faster performance than a SATA drive. In day-to-day use, that translates to near-instant game launches and rapid OS boot times. I loaded Apex Legends and League of Legends side by side, and the SSD shaved off roughly 10 seconds of load time compared to a typical SATA-based system. That speed also helps when you're juggling work tasks. Opening a large spreadsheet or a video editing project feels snappy, which makes this machine a decent hybrid for students or creators who need a bit of gaming juice without sacrificing productivity. Audio isn't usually the star of the show, but HP threw in dual speakers with audio boost and custom tuning. In a cramped dorm room, the speakers fill the space decently, and the boost adds a little punch to explosions in games. It's not a substitute for a proper headset, but you won't be straining to hear dialogue while you're on a group call. All that said, the Victus isn't without its compromises. The chassis, while sturdy enough to survive the usual backpack tosses, leans toward the plastic side of the spectrum. It feels solid enough for travel, but you'll notice a slight flex around the palm rest after a few weeks of heavy typing. The keyboard has decent travel, but the backlighting is limited to a single zone, which can be a turnoff if you love customizable RGB. Thermals are another practical concern. The laptop does get warm under load, and you'll hear the fans spin up noticeably during extended gaming sessions. They keep the CPU and GPU temperatures within safe limits, but the noise can become a distraction if you're trying to stream or record commentary without a microphone pop filter. Battery life is where the trade-off becomes more obvious. With the 144Hz screen and a power-hungry RTX 4050, you're looking at roughly 5 hours of mixed usage: some browsing, a bit of video playback, and occasional light gaming. If you're planning to game on the go, you'll want to keep the charger handy. On the other hand, if most of your day is spent in class, writing papers, or streaming movies, the 512GB SSD and 16GB of RAM make those tasks feel fluid, and the battery holds up just fine for a typical campus day. So who should actually consider buying the Victus? If you're a college student or a young professional who wants a single machine that can handle both coursework and weekend gaming without breaking the bank, this laptop hits a sweet